Why would we have black Americans chastising another black man for saying we deserve a hate crime bill for us? I think it's because if they start saying that black people have been uniquely the recipients of hate, that we need to create a bill just for black Americans, that would bolster the claims for reparations. And they don't want to do that. Tyrese Gibson, who just recently put out a new movie called 92. But that's not what I'm going to talk about tonight. Tonight, I'm going to talk about his conversation with lawyer Benjamin Crump.
What was the size of Dr. Martin Luther King's rims?
And they talked about the Asian hate crime bill. Here we go.
I would love one day to put some new things and boundaries in place pertaining to the police and black and brown culture. I mean, the moment that President Biden became the president, he signed it into law to protect the Asian community. What is that law that he signed?
Anti-Asian hate crime bill. Anti-Asian hate crime bill.
President Biden and Kamala Harris signed an Asian hate crime bill, which makes it beyond illegal to ever purposely and maliciously do anything to anybody in the Asian community. And there was a spike in crimes and criminal behavior in and around COVID, allegedly and specifically motivated by Trump. And so everybody started treating Asians, beating them, killing them, shooting them, stabbing them, hurting them. And then he gets into the White House, skips over every black and brown Mexican and Latino that have been getting killed like flies, and he makes it a law. Asian hate crime bill is signed into law. So whether you're a police officer or a regular civilian, if you wake up on a Wednesday and say, he's Asian, a woman or a man, let's go do something bad to them, which God forbid would ever happen again. But it is a crime bill that was signed into law that protects Asians at all costs. Where is that same fucking law to be signed into law when it comes to black and brown people? Because what you're doing is, President Biden and Kamala Harris, what you're doing is you're saying that black and brown people will continue to be disposable. That's why we got to vote, and we got to make sure our voices are heard, Tyrese. And it matters when we speak up and speak truth to power. When we speak what's on our heart, we will be heard. But first, you got to have the courage.
Okay, so a lot of people chimed in on this, and they had a lot of choice words for Tyrese. I wish I could play for you the clip that I want to directly reference, which was one by Roland Martin. But Roland Martin is so petty. He is so petty that if I play this clip, he would strike my channel. That's how petty he is. So I can't take that chance. But anyway, he called Tyrese dumb. That Tyrese didn't know what he was talking about. The Asian hate crime bill was not for Asians, though that's what people called it. That it really was for everybody. Roland's wrong. He's wrong. But let's put it in the context and go a little bit more in depth, because he's been lying to his audience, and there's nothing worse than a person that lies to his audience using a bit of truth, but then caking over the entire rest of it in order to make a point that defends the Democratic Party. Because see, Roland Martin is not in it for black people. I know we got black people that are delusional. They think Roland Martin has black people's best interests at heart. Roland Martin has Roland Martin's best interests and the interests of the Democratic Party at heart. He's a team player. That's all he is. Realize your broke ass is not on his team. Okay? That's just how it is. There have been several hate crime bills. There was the Civil Rights Act in 1968. This law was one of the first federal statutes that addressed hate crimes. It prohibits the use of force or the threat of force to interfere with an individual's federally protected rights. So the first act that they've been citing, that they say was for black people, it was for black people trying to vote, for black people attending school or using public facilities. It protected not just black people. In fact, the word black is not in the bill at all. The word black is not what the bill is. The bill it says to be discriminated against, violence against, due to race, color, religion, or national origin. Okay? And that was you doing something like interfere with your federally protected rights to vote. Because black people were getting their asses trying to vote. Black people were getting their asses kicked trying to vote, trying to go to school, trying to go into a store. You've seen the videos. Anybody seen the videos of black people getting attacked, walking down the street, going into a bakery or a shop to get something to eat? Little girls being harassed, was trying to go to school. That's what that bill was for. When Roland cites and says there's been a lot of hate crime bills for black people, he doesn't think you're going to actually go look and find out what those bills actually were about. So that wasn't the type of hate that most black people are talking about. When they say we want a hate crime bill, they're not talking about if we go vote. We don't want to get killed when we go vote. Of course not. We don't want to be beaten up when we go vote. Number two was the Hate Crime Statistics Act of 1990. So then they say, well, you know what we need to do? We need an act that's just going to tabulate hate crimes so we know what we're dealing with. Before this point, they didn't even track hate crimes, not officially. So that doesn't really help us. That's really just an instrument to measure. Because, we love big government. We love spending a whole lot of money creating a lot of stuff for people to do to make money, right? To have jobs in the government, in the federal government. But this doesn't really deter or stop hate crime. It just monitors it. Hey, we had 500 hate crimes that were reported. That type of thing. There was the Church Arson Prevention Act of 96. Yeah, it was until 1996 that they created a bill that said you couldn't bomb black churches. But they didn't say black. They said you couldn't bomb churches or set fire to churches over race, religion, ethnicity, or orientation. Yeah, they created a federal task force to prosecute perpetrators who bomb churches or set fire to churches. Okay, I don't want to get ahead of myself. So that was the Church Arson Prevention Act of 96. And it's amazing it took that long, right? Right? Because see, all the acts were very specific for what they did. Now, I think Roland Martin and Mark Lamont Hill and all these other folks who basically work for the Democratic Party who say, no, I'm really a Green Party person. Nah, come on, dude. All you do is fight for Democrats. Trying to funnel everyone into Biden and Kamala without actually saying it. You're one of those, we need to lessen the damage by going with Kamala anyway. That's the same thing. But anyway, here we go. You hear a lot of people use this one. The Matthew Shepard and James Beard Hate Crime Prevention Act of 2009. I don't know how it prevents hate crime. The name is horrible. Because how does this act prevent hate crime? Matthew Shepard was a young man who was brutally attacked and tortured and beat to death by random white guys. And they say it was because his orientation. He was a gay man. They say that's why they did it. They did not assault him in that way, but he died from his injuries. He was beat up very badly. Horrible thing. But because his orientation was LGBTQ, they said we need to create a law. We're going to create an act that protects them because I don't know if they had the Civil Rights Act. The Hate Crimes Act, it had sexual orientation, but they did not have sexual identity. So the gender identity now has become a part of the act. And that's what happened with the Matthew Shepard and the James Beard Jr. Hate Crime Act. Now, the Beard part of it, the James Beard part of it, was a black man who was killed by some white supremacist redneck dudes, right? Horrible story, graphic, disgusting. It was just horrific what they did to this brother, right? What it did was, on this significant piece of hate crime legislation, it expanded the 68 federal hate crime law to include crimes motivated by a victim's actual or perceived gender. See what I'm saying? It's like they just kind of tacked in beard, the orientation, the gender identity, or disability. It also removed the prerequisite that the victim be engaged in a federally protected activity. So here's the thing, guys. Until 2009, hate crimes are really about things that you would do that were federally protected. Voting, and they were trying to stop you from voting, from using the bathroom, a public bathroom, or going into a store, or something of that nature, something that's protected federally. It was in 2009 that they added that did not have to be the case for it to be prosecuted under federal law, not state law, federal law. Then came in 2021, the COVID Hate Crimes Act of 2021. People called it the Asian Hate Crime Bill because that was the purpose that was stated for the creation of the bill. Once again, we talked the other day about narratives. We talked about the impetus that a president can put on an issue and make that issue central. You can use the bully pulpit. You can use legislation. You can use executive orders to drive legislation. And that's what was done. As Tyrese pointed out correctly, there were a small spike. If you black, it was a blip. It was a blip if you black, because the spike that they're referring to seemed like a lot of Asian hate crimes that were being perpetrated upon the Asian community, but that's only because they didn't get a lot of hate crimes to begin with. So it looked big to them. I mean, if you go from 10 to 100, that's a big jump. But if you're already at like 500 or 600, which is where black people usually are, then, you know, it's like, okay, 10 more or 100 more takes us to 600. It ain't crazy. So they were like, we can't let this thing get out of control. And also, it was also about sending a message that Trump is horrible, because they attributed the rise in Asian attacks to Donald Trump.
Why do you keep calling this the Chinese virus? There are reports of dozens of incidents of bias against Chinese Americans in this country. Your own aide, Secretary Azar, says he does not use this term. He says ethnicity does not cause the virus. Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. It comes from China. I want to be accurate.
About Chinese
yeah, please, John.
Please. The aides behind you. Are you comfortable
I have great love for all of the people from our country. But as you know, China tried to say at one point, maybe they stopped now, that it was caused by American soldiers. That can't happen. It's not going to happen. Not as long as I'm president. It comes from China.
They said, oh, it's got to do with Donald Trump because Donald Trump made comments about the origination of COVID-19 by speculating that it was derived in China. Now, we know that that's been the official narrative since then. But at the time, they were like, no, that's not true. And then Trump, I remember he made a joke where he called it the Kung flu.
What if you could have seen outside, or if you could have heard the reports, oh, it's COVID, it's this, by the way, it's a disease, without question, has more names than any disease in history. I can name Kung flu, I can name 19 different versions of names. Many call it a virus, which it is. Many call it a flu. What difference? I think we have 19 or 20 versions of the name.
Last July, President Trump declared himself the least racist person there is anywhere in the world. Why does he use racist phrases like the Kung flu?
Well, the president doesn't. What the president does do is point to the fact that the origin of the virus is China. It's a fair thing to point out as China tries to ridiculously rewrite history ridiculously blame the coronavirus on American soldiers. This is what China's trying to do. And what President Trump is saying, no, China, I will label this virus for its place of origin.
That's what he's saying by using the racist phrase Kung Flu?
He is linking it to its place of origin.
What does he have to say to Asian Americans who are deeply offended and worried that his use will lead to further attacks of discrimination?
So the president has said very clearly it's important that we totally protect our Asian community in the U.S. and all around the world. They're amazing people, and the spreading of the virus is not their fault in any way, shape, or form. They're working closely with us to get rid of it. We will prevail together. It's very important. So it's not a discussion about Asian Americans, who the president values and prizes as citizens of this great country. It is an indictment of China for letting this virus get here. And I would
calling it the
detail it for you in an email.
Haley,
Yes,
you've got
Justin.
to admit that. It is not the same thing as calling it the
Yes, the president never regrets putting the onus back on China, pointing out that China is responsible for this, and in the process standing up for U.S. troops who are being blamed by China in a campaign of misinformation.
And what liberal media was trying to say, and what the Democrats were trying to say, which is almost the same thing. I mean, come on. The folks at the MSNBC, they pretty much were just labeling this as a bill that needed to be created because Trump put all these Asian people's lives in jeopardy. It was in response to the increase of hate crimes and violence against Asian Americans during the COVID-19 pandemic. It aims to expedite the review of hate crimes and make the reporting process easier at the local, state, and federal levels. It also provides guidance for law enforcement to establish online reporting and ensure accessibility to hate crime reporting resources. So that was the Hate Crime Act of 2021. Okay. Now, I don't remember if Roland pointed out the Emmett Till bill. So in 2022, the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act was passed. And in the United States, federal law, which defines lynching as a federal hate crime. Up until this point, lynching was not a federal hate crime. It increased the maximum penalty to 30 years. And that's for several hate crime offenses. The Department of Justice is responsible for prosecuting cases under this act. It provides federal jurisdiction over lynching cases. So because of this act, if anyone gets lynched, not just black people, people, okay? If people get lynched, this law can apply. Which brings me to my point. Why do so many black people advocate for a specific bill that addresses black people being the victims of hate crimes? Black Americans have been the primary recipients of hate and have been the record holders. I don't want it to be that way. That's the way it is. It is not crazy talk. It is not wrong, just wrong. Don't know what you're talking about. It is not wrong to say America does not have a black anti-hate bill. Why come black people can't have their own bill? Why would black men in America, black men who call themselves to say they love black people, defend a government that won't make a bill specifically to protect black people who have been the over-dominating people that have been the victims of hate crimes. To this day, folks, we are the primary recipients of hate. When they pulled Emmett Till's body out of the Tallahatchie River, they also pulled out a lot of other kids' bodies. So when they combed that river, they found other bodies that had been there for quite some time that nobody even knew what had happened. I remember when I went to the Equal Justice Initiative and got a listing of all these people, all these black people that had been lynched with thousands. And that's just the ones that were reported. Sometimes just say you went missing. To make it in reporting, somebody had to find you and be able to determine what happened to you. That would mean they didn't have DNA and forensics to that extent. Somebody went missing, they went missing. Then at some point you find some remains and you didn't have DNA and able to do the analysis to determine what happened. We're talking about thousands and thousands of black people. That's why black people fled. They had homes in the South. They fled those homes. They call it the Great Migration and came north to get away from being lynched. Once again, why would we have black Americans chastising another black man for saying we deserve a hate crime bill? For us, I think it's because if they start saying that black people have been uniquely the recipients of hate, that we need to create a bill just for black Americans, that would bolster the claims for reparations. And they don't want to do that. And Mark Lamar here don't want to do that. And Roland Martin don't want to do that. And all the other ones coming at Tyrese for bringing this up don't want that to happen because their bosses don't want it to happen. It's the same thing happening in California right now, where all the defenders, the California Congressional Black Caucus is defending Gavin Newsom. You stand back there, boss. I got this. We ain't gonna run this bill right now. It's not good for us. We're gonna fix it and do better. That's right, boss. That's right. We're gonna do that. Leave him alone. They're defending Gavin Newsom. The anti-Asian hate crime bill. When people like Roland, the historical context is there for one reason why, but the Asian hate crime bill was so much a focus of Asians beyond what Roland said. Don't listen to Roland. Roland's a bold-faced liar, and he's trying to switch the narrative. There were 75 different Asian American and LGBT groups that work with Asian American communities that protested the signing of the bill because they said this bill is going to do nothing but make us more divided with our brothers and sisters, our black brothers and sisters, our Latino brothers and sisters, and it's not going to make us more safe. We don't want more division. And this bill ain't going to do nothing but make us more divided. Why would you want to give us a bill? Give one to the blacks. That was the Asian groups themselves. I said it then. I'm saying it again. See, we don't have enough. This platform is just not big enough. I've covered this before. You didn't hear about it. You should have heard about it. You should know that there were Asian organizations, but the sole stipulation of helping Asian people, because those groups exist. All other groups, Latino Americans, Asian Americans, Jewish Americans, indigenous folks, all other groups have organizations that advocate for themselves and fight for them, okay? It's not just black groups. We got so many silos, we don't know what's going on. We don't know what other folks are doing. Back when Joe Biden, back when they signed that bill, the COVID-19.
President Biden today signing a bill to combat the growing number of hate incidents against Asian Americans.
Lester, there are few bipartisan moments in Washington, but this was one of them. President Biden signing legislation that aims to combat the recent rise in hate crimes, particularly against Asian Americans. The bill improves hate crime tracking and bolsters support for state and local officials. The president called hatred and racism the ugly poison that has long haunted our nation. It's worth noting this was one of the first large indoor gatherings of the Biden administration, almost everyone without a mask.
Yeah. To help Asians who have spiked during COVID-19 in the number of hate crimes. They didn't even want that bill done. They acknowledged themselves that it looked horrible, considering the legacy of lynching to black people, the legacy of hate crimes committed against black Americans. They weren't advocating for that bill. Why are so many black Americans advocating for a separate bill for black Americans? So one was the historical context of us being the predominant number of people that have been recipients of hate crimes. Sorry, I don't want to win that. I don't want to win that. We don't want to win that as a group, I'm pretty sure. It is what it is. The house that gets burned down is the house that needs to be rebuilt. Current disparities. Statistics show African Americans continue to be disproportionately targeted for hate crimes. So not just historically, today. It's still happening. We still are the biggest recipients of hate crimes. Perceived gaps in current laws. Advocates may believe existing hate crime laws don't adequately cover claims, certain types of basis or bias incidents against African Americans. Some feel that the laws don't go far enough. Guys, those laws are written very specifically. They cover very specific issues. They had to create different addendums to include orientation, for instance. Every step of the way, they had to make these laws. But they didn't say black. As if white people were being beat up when they went in to vote. No, they weren't. But they didn't want to admit it was black people. Symbolism and recognition. A specific act could be seen as an important symbolic acknowledgement of the unique challenges faced by African Americans. Once again, Roland and Mark Lamont Hill sound horrible on this, and it's very troubling that those brothers, and I've disagreed, particularly with Roland on a number of issues, guys, but it's disgustingly, it's shameful that these brothers will resort to this. Black people deserve, if we deserve Harriet Tubman on a $50 bill, damn it, we deserve a damn anti-hate crime bill. And we deserve the Juneteenth. I think we deserve to stay alive more than we deserve the Juneteenth, a holiday we already had. We already celebrated it. You got the Juneteenth check? No. Well, you know what? We'll take a bill that says, leave black people alone. All the stupid symbolism they give us, Hip Hop Day, other garbage. What we ask for, we can't get. So they come up with superfluous nonsense, goofy, unimportant, shinola. Them wearing kente cloth, taking the knee for George Floyd. I don't know what we get for that. Did that help us? No, what we would prefer is an anti-lynching bill for black people, a hate crime bill specifically for black Americans. They don't want to do it. I'm telling you guys, I feel they don't want to do it because they don't want to bolster our claim for reparations. Hard to deny, you still got to have this study and figure out if the black people really need money, if they deserve money for being denied the ability to build wealth, for having the government fight to stop us from building wealth for 300 years. On an institutional level, not an individual white guy mad at you, don't want you to be able to sell your wares. I'm talking about the government. I'm talking about the SBA. I'm talking about the USDA. Okay? As for how it might provide further protection, we can increase the penalties. It could potentially introduce harsher sentences for crimes motivated by anti-black bias. See? But you know who that's going to impact the most, right? The whites. We don't want to impact whites, even if they are violent criminals attacking innocent black people. We don't want to infringe on them because that's what an anti-hate crime bill directed for black people would do. Because we are the number one recipients of the hate, and they're the number one perpetrators of the hate towards us. Towards us. It would expand definitions. It might broaden what qualifies as a hate crime. Yeah, we might be able to make some different, if we do some new legislation that focuses on black folks, we might be able to broaden it to include some of this current shit that's going on. Yeah, because I don't think those currents that call the cops on black guys for fishing, I don't think they'd be calling the cops the way they do. Some of the things that happen, guy can't even deliver a package for Amazon without giving somebody a DNA sample, basically, to be in the neighborhood. Black people should be able to go about their life, do their jobs, and not be harassed at every turn. This would help that. Could potentially, depending on the way that it's crafted. Make sense? Dedicate resources. Such an act could allocate specific funding and resources for prevention, investigation, and prosecution of these crimes. Once again, a specific focused piece of legislation can direct that. We're going to tackle this issue. We're going to deal with it. We're going to address it. And these are the steps. Improve data collection. We can track it specifically for us, specifically for Black Americans. It might mandate more detailed tracking of hate crimes against African Americans. Raised awareness. Just the idea of the bill, just the idea of the act, because we're going to say it's passed, it's done, it's on the books. If that happens, just the awareness of it happening, that's where prevention can begin. Why? There's only one reason why. Up till now, none of the bills said Black people, Black Americans, specifically, for a reason. Don't say, well, James Beard was Black. Yeah, that made hate crimes now a federal crime. It didn't make just Black people. Did not protect Black people specifically. Specifically. I think they owe Tyrese an apology. Tyrese doesn't strike me to be a person that would just put this out here without any type of thought. And I'm also not going to hold him to the criteria that he has to go through and look up all that research. He's just having a conversation with Benjamin Crump. You know why Benjamin Crump did not correct Tyrese, instead complimented him bringing up the issue of the anti-Asian hate crime bill? Because it's very much known to regular people that bill exists, and the language in that bill specifically focuses on Asian Americans. That's the purpose of it. Instead of defending the Democratic Party, how about you focus on a bill that says the Anti-Black Hate Crime Act? How about that? Instead of championing or trying to tear down Tyrese and anyone who's championing for the most impaired, the most victimized group in America. Not because it's great, not because we want to win. This is not something to win. This is not the Olympics of who has the most suffering. This is just the numbers. Okay? That's all this is. Advocate for that next time, brothers. My brothers.